The Emperor of the Keth Dominion received the word 17 minutes after the last child stopped breathing. Vel-Sareth logged the timestamp, because that was his function. He was the Imperial Scribe, 3rd rank, 6 tendrils, eyes adapted for low-frequency light in the deep amber corridors of the Dominion's administrative heart. His job was to record. He recorded the demographic pruning order when it came down from the upper chamber. He recorded the execution confirmation when it came back up. He recorded the silence from Earth that followed, which lasted 11 hours and 43 minutes, and felt, in a way he did not note in the log, like the silence before a fault line moves. Then the word arrived. One word, transmitted on the standard diplomatic frequency, authenticated with Earth's UN seal, addressed not to the Emperor, not to the Dominion's Foreign Relation Bureau, not to the 47 Keth administrators who had signed the pruning order. Vel-Sareth ran the addressing metadata 3 times because it did not parse correctly on the first 2 attempts. The word was addressed to the children. He read the word. He ran it through the Dominion's linguistic database, which contained 4,312 languages and had translated 11 species into compliance and 3 into silence. The database returned a result immediately. High confidence. Unambiguous. He read the result. He read it again. The Emperor was in the upper chamber, receiving a trade delegation from the Surathi Collective, when Vel-Sareth submitted the priority interrupt. Protocol required him to wait outside the gilded pressure seal. He waited 4 minutes and 17 seconds. He counted them. He was not sure why he counted them. He had never counted waiting time before. The human transmission, the Emperor said, when Vel-Sareth was finally admitted. The Emperor of the Keth Dominion was old enough that his outer carapace had gone the deep violet of mineral-stained shell. His 4 primary eyes moved independently. He gave the impression of watching everything simultaneously and being impressed by none of it. You interrupted a trade negotiation for 1 word. The word required immediate reporting, Eminence. What is it? Vel-Sareth read from his log. His voice was steady. He had trained his voice to be steady. Remembered. The upper chamber was very quiet. The trade delegation from the Surathi Collective had not been dismissed. They stood at the chamber's far end, pretending not to hear, which was a lie because Surathi hearing was exceptional, and everyone present understood this. That is their response. The Emperor's outer carapace shifted the Keth equivalent of a frown to the demographic pruning of 5,731 of their juvenile population. Yes, Eminence. 1 word. Yes. Remembered. The Emperor said the word as if tasting it for poison. This is a declaration of war? The linguistic database classifies it as. Vel-Sareth checked his log, though he had the result memorized. Affirmative. Past tense confirmation. The database's closest cultural analog in Keth usage would be a memorial acknowledgement. The deceased are being formally recognized as known. By whom? It was not a question with an obvious answer. Vel-Sareth had spent 11 minutes on this problem before the interrupt. The transmission was addressed to the deceased, Eminence, not to us. The upper chamber was quiet again. The Surathi delegation had stopped pretending they weren't listening. They are communicating with their dead, the Emperor said finally. That appears to be the correct interpretation, and the content of that communication is that the dead are remembered. Yes. The Emperor was silent for a long time. Long enough that Vel-Sareth updated his log twice with ambient chamber data, which he had never done before during an audience. He was not sure what he was trying to record. The quality of the silence, perhaps. The way it sat in the room differently than silences usually sat. Threat assessment, the Emperor said at last. I want a full analysis by morning. What is the human military posture? What fleet movements have been detected? What their Council of Nations has communicated to allied species. Of course, Eminence. And Vel-Sareth. Eminence. Log this under unknown response category. The Emperor's primary eyes settled on him, all 4. I do not want it miscategorized. Vel-Sareth walked back to his alcove. He opened his archive. He created a new category header, which he had never done in 12 years of service. The Keth Dominion had encountered 41 species. Every one of them, when broken, had responded with grief logic, tributes, negotiations, pleas. The occasional futile military gesture, which was also a form of grief logic, the action of a species that knows it has lost and cannot stop itself from swinging anyway. He typed the new header, unknown response category. No historical precedent. He looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at the word again. Remembered. He did not know why, but he checked the timestamp of the transmission one more time. 17 minutes. 17 minutes after the last confirmation came in from the pruning fleet. Earth had sent this. Not a declaration of war. Not a plea. Not silence. A promise to the dead. Vel-Sareth closed his log. He did not sleep well that night, though he logged that he did, because he did not have a category for what kept him awake either. She arrived in a single pilot vessel that the Dominion's perimeter defense array flagged, scanned, and nearly vaporized before the UN authentication codes cleared. Vel-Sareth watched the arrival from the scribe's observation alcove above Docking Bay 11. The ship was small, human-made. Obviously, Keth construction had a specific aesthetic logic based on load-bearing efficiency and mineral conservation. Human ships looked improvised by comparison, like something built by a species that changed its mind partway through. This one had a dent in its forward hull casing that had been repaired with a visibly different alloy. He noted this in his log without knowing why. She came out of the airlock in a standard diplomatic envirosuit that had seen considerable use. The seals at her wrists were the newer model. The rest was older. She was 47 years old according to the Dominion's intelligence file, which also listed her as former trauma surgeon, current UN liaison for alien relations, and the only human diplomat who had previously negotiated a ceasefire with the Vel-Shan without using an interpreter. She had black hair going gray at the temples. She moved through the decontamination corridor, the way surgeons moved, not impatiently, but with the specific economy of someone who had learned to conserve motion, because wasted motion cost time, and time cost lives. She had not slept in 6 days. Vel-Sareth could not determine this from observation. He noted it later, when he reviewed her biosigns from the base sensors. Heart rate, elevated. Cortisol markers at the upper range of sustainable function. The kind of numbers a body produces when it has decided that sleep is optional and hasn't updated that assessment in nearly a week. She had brought one item off the ship, a data drive, small enough to fit in her closed fist. Keth protocol required visiting diplomats to submit grief documents within 2 hours of arrival. The grief document was standard procedure for species who had suffered losses under Dominion administrative orders. It was a formal acknowledgement of the Dominion's authority, combined with a request for consideration of humanitarian accommodation. Every species submitted them. The Vel-Shan had submitted 17. The Sarathi had submitted 9, 6 of which had been accepted. Mara Ose submitted nothing. She sat in the diplomatic waiting chamber and she waited. She did not pace. She did not review documents on a handheld. She sat in the Keth-proportioned chair, which was too large for her and designed for a body with a different number of joints, and she looked at the middle distance with the focused emptiness of someone running internal calculations. Vel-Sareth, watching from his monitoring station, updated her file. No grief document submitted, awaiting protocol clarification. Then he sat and waited alongside her, in a sense, which was not his function, but which he found himself doing regardless. The Emperor granted audience at the 3rd hour. Vel-Sareth took his place in the scribe's alcove of the Imperial chamber. The chamber was grand in the way Keth architecture was always grand, efficient grandeur, height-serving acoustic function, light position to maximize the visibility of the Emperor's ceremonial carapace markings. It was designed to make visitors feel small. It worked reliably on most species. She walked in and looked at the Emperor, the way a surgeon looks at a tumor. Not hatred, not fear, clinical interest. The particular focused attention of someone determining the nature and extent of a problem. Diplomat Ose. The Emperor spoke first, which was protocol. The Dominion initiated all formal exchanges. You have come without your grief documents. This is irregular. I don't have anything to grieve document to you, she said. Her voice was even. It was not the evenness of someone suppressing emotion. It was the evenness of someone who had passed through emotion into something on the other side of it. I'm here to observe. To observe. Your court. Your administrative processes. The way you conduct your affairs. She held the data drive at her side, loosely. With your permission. The Emperor studied her. His 4 primary eyes could operate independently. He was capable of processing 4 separate points of focus simultaneously. He brought all 4 to bear on this woman in the worn diplomatic suit. You represent Earth's governing body. Yes, Earth has suffered a significant demographic event under Dominion administrative authority. 5,731 children, she said. The words came out the same as the rest of her words. Level. Factual. Yes. And you do not wish to negotiate. I didn't say that. The Emperor's carapace shifted. What do you wish? She looked at him. I'd like to see the records. Vel-Sareth watched the Emperor process this request. The Dominion's records of the pruning operation were not classified. Classification implied the possibility of shame, and the Dominion did not operate on shame. The records existed. They were accurate. They were filed under Administrative Action 7441C, Demographic Pruning, Human Colonies, and they contained exactly what they claimed to contain. The Emperor, Vel-Sareth noted, expected her to break when she saw the numbers. This was the standard calculus. Show a species the full scope of what has been done to them, documented and filed and bureaucratically finalized, and they understand the reality of their position. They grieve. They negotiate from grief. You may access the relevant files, the Emperor said. She nodded once. No gratitude. No visible reaction. She followed the chamber attendant to the records terminal, and she sat down, and she opened the file. Vel-Sareth watched her read. She didn't break. She opened the data drive and connected it to the terminal, and she began, methodically, to copy. He wrote in his log, "The human has not displayed grief. She has displayed something our instruments cannot categorize. The word for it does not exist in the Keth administrative lexicon. Possibly worse than grief. Notation pending further observation." He looked at that last sentence for a moment. Then he left it. She began at the first hour past midday in the Imperial chamber. The Emperor had not vacated it. Vel-Sareth did not know whether this was calculated a decision to watch her, to study the human response at close range, or whether the Emperor simply had not anticipated what she was about to do, and was therefore still present when she started. She stood at the center of the chamber floor, and she opened the data drive. "Lena Marquez," she said. "Age 7. Kepler Station, 3rd Colony Ring." Her voice was clear. It carried in the chamber's acoustic architecture, which had been designed for proclamations and legal decrees. Not for this. Omar Reyes Fontaine. Age 9. New Lagos, 2nd Expansion Zone. Vel-Sareth, in his alcove, opened his log. Priya Nair, age 6. Chandrasekhar Settlement, Outer Belt. He began to write the names down. He did not examine why he was doing this. It was not his function. The names were not part of the official administrative record he was tasked to maintain. He wrote them anyway, in a secondary file, which he labeled Times Supplementary Observation Log Times, and which was, technically, within the boundaries of his discretionary recording authority. Tobias Wren, age 11. Armstrong City, Lunar 1. By the 400th name, 3 of the chamber's 6 floor-level attendants had found reasons to be elsewhere. Vel-Sareth noted their departures in the main log with timestamps, but no editorializing. They had other duties, probably. Amara Okello, age 8. Mombasa Orbital, Ring C. By the 800th name, the room's acoustic quality changed. The chamber had been designed for an audience that moved and shifted, and provided the ambient noise of living administration. Without them, each name hit the high mineral walls and came back distinct. There was no overlap. Each child's name had its own moment of return, bouncing off the stone, fading, making room for the next. Hiroshi Tanaka Webb, age 4. 4. Vel-Sareth's transcription did not slow. His notation system was efficient. Name, age, location. 41 characters on average. He had transcribed longer documents in less time. He noticed, at the 1100th name, that his transcription rate had dropped by 6%. He could not account for this technically. His appendages were functioning normally. The data input rate was consistent. The reduction was coming from somewhere else. A fractional hesitation between each name that had no mechanical cause. The Emperor had not moved. This was the thing Vel-Sareth noticed most, in the way you notice the thing that breaks the pattern. The Emperor of the Keth Dominion, who managed 4 simultaneous administrative functions during standard audiences, who reviewed treaty modifications in real time, who had once signed 11 execution orders during a diplomatic reception, without pausing the reception. This emperor was doing nothing, except sitting in his primary throne and listening to a human woman read names. Yusuf al-Rashid. Age 10. Titan Station. Science Quarter. By the 2000th name, the chamber was half empty. By the 3000th, Vel-Sareth had stopped noting the departures. Chiamaka Eze. Age 7. New Abuja, West Habitat. He wrote the names. He wrote all of them. He did not question this. There was, he understood dimly, no version of himself that was going to stop writing the names partway through. The logic of the thing, the particular inexorable logic of a list that had a number at the front of it and would have a last entry at the end, required completion. You did not begin a count and abandon it. The count existed. The count had always existed, filed under Administrative Action 7441C, complete and accurate and filed. She was making him feel that. That was the thing she was doing. She was not performing grief. She was not making an argument. She was performing a mathematical proof that 5,731 was not a statistic, that it was 5,731 individuals, each of whom had had a name before the Dominion's administrative apparatus had processed them into a number, and that the names had existed before the number and continued to exist after it, and that someone was going to say them, and it was going to take exactly as long as it took. Felix Johansson Park. Age 12. Vel-Sareth's secondary file was now the longest document he had ever personally compiled. She read for 4 hours and 19 minutes. At the end, the chamber held the Emperor, Vel-Sareth, in his alcove, and 2 attendants who had never found their reason to leave. She closed the data drive. She looked up at the Emperor. "Now you know them," she said. The Emperor's carapace was very still. When he finally spoke, his voice had the same register as always. Formal, controlled, the voice of someone accustomed to the weight of the words they use. But the words themselves came a fraction of a second slower than usual. Vel-Sareth noted the timing because timing was data. "What do humans intend?" the Emperor said. She looked at him. The look she gave him was the same look she had given him at the beginning, the surgeon's look, the clinical interest, but something had shifted inside it. There was something beneath the clinical surface now that had not been there before, or that he had not been able to see before. She smiled. It did not reach her eyes. "I'll be in touch," she said. In his alcove, Vel-Sareth looked at his secondary file. 5,731 names. Ages ranging from 8 months to 14 years. 41 inhabited human settlements across 6 star systems. He saved the file. He had never saved a document with such care before. He checked the backup redundancy twice. He did not know, sitting there in the amber low light of his alcove, what had been built in that chamber over those 4 hours and 19 minutes. He knew only that something had been constructed, out of names and silence, and the acoustic return of a room designed to make things sound official, and that whatever it was going to be very difficult to unbuild. It began at 0300 hours, Imperial Standard. Vel-Sareth was at his station, processing the overnight administrative log, when the first monitoring alert came in. He almost filed it as a communications array anomaly. The Dominion sensor net occasionally picked up background radiation artifacts on diplomatic frequencies. It was a known calibration issue, low priority, handled by the Technical Maintenance Bureau. Then the second alert came in. Same frequency band, different origin point. 11 light minutes from the first. Then 17 more. He pulled the full sensor report, and looked at it for a long time. The data was clean. No calibration artifact. These were intentional transmissions, authenticated, continuous, originating from human settlement coordinates across 4 star systems simultaneously. He opened the audio translation of the nearest signal. Lena Marquez, age 7. Kepler Station, 3rd Colony Ring. He sat very still. Omar Reyes Fontaine, age 9. New Lagos, 2nd Expansion Zone. The same list. Being read, on every human frequency, from every human colony, at the same time. Not a military broadcast. Not coded communications. Just the names. Being sent out on the standard public diplomatic band that every species in the monitored galaxy kept receivers tuned to. Vel-Sareth submitted a priority interrupt at 0317. The Emperor was not pleased about the hour. How many broadcast points? The Emperor said, in the flat tone that meant he was computing something and preferred not to be asked follow-up questions while he did it. Current count is 63, Eminence. The number is increasing. We're detecting new origin points every 11 to 14 minutes as human settlements in the outer systems come into transmission range. Duration. The list takes 4 hours and 19 minutes to read in full. The broadcasts began simultaneously and appear to be looping. Vel-Sareth checked his data. We are currently in the 2nd cycle. The Emperor was quiet. Can we jam it? The broadcast is on the standard diplomatic monitoring frequency. Vel-Sareth kept his voice level. Jamming that frequency would constitute a communications interdiction event under the Galactic Compact, Articles 14 through 17. It would be an act of aggression against every signatory species, not solely against humanity. I know what the articles say. Yes, Eminence. I raised it because the practical consequence is that we cannot silence the broadcast without declaring, in effect, war on the monitoring compact itself. The 42 signatory species would interpret it as, I know how they would interpret it. The Emperor's 4 eyes had settled into an unusual configuration. 2 forward, 2 inward. The expression Vel-Sareth associated with a problem that did not fit existing frameworks. What are the neutral species doing? This was the part of the report Vel-Sareth had been assembling since 0300. And it was, he understood, the part that mattered. The Veth-Laurel Linguistics Bureau has issued a voluntary translation notice, he said. They are providing real-time translations of the broadcast into 17 Veth-Laurel dialects for their population's information. The Emperor said nothing. The Surathi Collective has made a similar announcement. They are translating into Surathi Standard and 3 regional variants. Vel-Sareth did not look up from his log. Additionally, the Mirasen Academic Council has flagged the broadcast as a significant xenocultural document and has begun archival proceedings under the Galactic Heritage Preservation Act. The Emperor's carapace shifted. They are translating the names, the Emperor said. Yes, Eminence. Voluntarily. Yes, Eminence. No human asked them to.